I reached financial freedom at age 38. I did it with 3 simple steps while working a 9 to 5 job. I will also share my entire investment portfolio with you, explain to you why I don't own any property and why I'm looking to increase my exposure to gold and crypto. So grab a coffee and let's dive in. So let's start with a little introduction of myself. I achieved FIRE or financial independence at age 38. I'm married with 1 kid and I've been working for 14 years before I was laid off last year. Now about my portfolio, it is currently around $2 million. So let's go into the 3 steps that I followed to financial freedom. Step number 1, being active in your active income. So when I first started on this FIRE journey, I really had to focus on my income first. Let's take a look at my pay trajectory over the last 14 years of working. This is my growth chart. You can see that every year I managed to increase my salary by at least 10%. But you can also see that my career growth is not linear with 2 key outliers here. The first is I took a huge pay cut to move from finance to tech. After 5 years working in finance, I've gained some momentums in my salary growth there. And when I moved to the tech industry, I had to start from scratch and have to take a huge pay cut. But it was still the right move because tech was booming. And eventually my pay did recover and even exceed my previous salary as well. And the second outlier is that I was laid off. But by then I was already financially free and that really cushioned the impact of the layoff. And that really is the value of being financially free, and that's why I'm creating this video. Okay, so how did I consistently increase my salary? The first is growing internally with my current job. That means volunteering from projects, learning skills that are outside my job scope, and networking and building new relationships within the company. Now, this is not easy as an Asian from Singapore because growing up, we were often taught to keep our head low and just do your work and not be so prominent. Ultimately, I still did it, and what I was simply doing was just showing initiative and being proactive, and therefore increasing the probability of more career opportunities coming my way in my own company. The second is exploring externally with new jobs. This essentially means job hopping, where I will network externally and speak regularly to external headhunters. I will also force myself to interview at least once every 6 months, even though I'm happy at my current job. Again, growing up as a Singaporean, this is not easy. As Asians, we are taught to be loyal to our company. But why I decided to do that was because growing up, I saw how my mother got screwed by her company. She stayed in one single company for 30 years of her whole life. She worked there, and throughout that 30 years, she only got a pay increment less than 5 times. So I'm going to say that again. Working 30 years in one company, she got her pay increase less than 5 times throughout 30 years. And each pay increment is only a few $100. It's a low single-digit percentage increase. And despite all that loyalty, after 30 years, my mom was eventually let go as well. So I decided that that's not the career fate that I want to have, and I want to break this generational cycle of working too much for too little. Step number 2, being passive with my passive income. Now to the exciting part, you finally get to hear about my investments. Here's a breakdown of my portfolio again. I built this portfolio 14 years ago where I will invest up to half of my take-home pay after taxes every month for the last 14 years. So every time my pay increase, I will increase the portion for investment too. Now you can immediately notice that it is actually not that exciting. I do not have a lot of single stocks or high growth or penny stocks. Instead, majority of my holdings are in diversified low-cost passive ETFs. Hence, being passive in my passive income. Now when I was younger, I definitely did invest in individual stocks. But I kept on losing money, even though I was working in a bank and I was surrounded by so much financial expertise. And when I was working in a bank, I started to notice that even in my clients, the younger ones who tend to be a bit more aggressive, a bit more risky investing in individual stocks, they tend to underperform my older clients who are a bit more passive, a bit more patient, and they would invest in long term. So I decided that, hey, I'm not as wealthy as my clients. I don't have any money to lose. So I decided to follow what my older customers were doing and started to be more diversified and invest in indexes instead. So for index funds, my majority holdings here you can see is in the S&P USD ETF. This essentially is the S&P 500 index, and it allows me to invest in the top 500 companies in the US. First benefit is of course diversification. It reduces my reliance and exposure to any single stock or sector. Second benefit is that as a Singaporean investor, the USD ETF presents tax advantage. US listed ETF face 30% dividend withholding tax. However, UCITS ETFs that are domiciled in Ireland benefit from a lower 15% withholding tax due to tax treaty. Lastly, I like this ETF because it allows me to bet on the US. The US have many flaws for sure, but it is clearly biased towards being pro-entrepreneur, pro-investor, and pro-capital. In contrast, you can see in my portfolio that I also have some China tech ETFs, and they are all losing positions for me. I basically invested in them in the earlier China tech boom, and it was doing very well because companies like Alibaba was gaining a lot. But soon after, the Chinese government started to impose a lot of restrictions on these tech companies. So these tech companies all started to lose value, and my portfolio was impacted as well. Now, the only single stock that you will see in my portfolio is Google. That's because I used to work there, and part of my compensation was receiving Google stock. The rest that you see in my portfolio are boring CPF and Singapore saving bonds. The interest rate is rather low. CPF pays only about 2.5% and my Singapore saving bonds pays about 3%. Now, any financial advisor that is looking at my portfolio right now will definitely advise me to reduce my conservative holdings and increase in my stock holding. I technically could, but for my risk appetite, I'm happy with this current composition, and I don't feel the need to over-optimize and over-invest just to squeeze out an additional ROI at the expense of my peace of mind. Another thing that I forgot to mention to you in step 1 was that in my last few years of working, besides working in the tech industry, I was also having a second job teaching in a local university. What this does is that two companies are contributing to not only my active income, but also to my CPF as well. Thus, in the future, if I ever want to come back to Singapore, I have a sizable amount in my CPF ready to be deployed and buy a property. Speaking of property, you might notice in my portfolios that I do not own any property at all. Now, a lot of Singaporeans would argue that property is the fastest way to increase their wealth. But I decided to not invest in property because of a few reasons. One, property in Singapore is very regulated, and most of the property there is on a 99-year leasehold model. For those of you unfamiliar with the Singapore property market, that means that most property in Singapore, you only get to hold it for 99 years before you have to return it back to the state. This means that most property in Singapore will gain initially, but eventually depreciate as the 99-year-old lease actually runs out. For a long-term investor like myself, that doesn't sound like a good investment to me. The second reason is that to buy a property in Singapore, it often involves a mortgage. In fact, in Singapore, it's actually common to take a 30-year mortgage to buy a property. And to me, I saw this as how the system is tricking us. By buying a home that is way above our budget and taking up a 30-year mortgage, this ultimately means that I have to work for 30 years. If you're watching this video, you're also like me, where you value financial independence and the freedom that comes with it. And being forced to work 30 years is the exact opposite of freedom. I'm open to owning property in the future, but I will see it just as a lifestyle expense for my own living rather than an investment. Lastly, you can see a tiny 5% of my portfolio in gold and in crypto, mainly Bitcoin. Basically, I'm doing this for diversification purposes. I'm starting to feel too concentrated in the S&P 500, and I'm also starting to feel the effects of inflation. I think you'll agree with me that everything is getting more expensive, which means that the value of our currency, be it the Sing dollar or the US dollar, is getting weaker. So diversifying into crypto and gold helps me hedge against inflation. Again, similar to my equity strategy where I just invest in the market leader, be it in the US or in the S&P 500, I also chose to invest in gold and in Bitcoin. I decided not to look into other more exciting but risky commodities like silver and oil, or other smaller coins like alternate coins or meme coins. I'm okay to give up on potentially higher gains by not investing in smaller commodities or smaller coins in exchange for my peace of mind. Okay, let's move on to the third and final step, which is avoiding middle-class mistakes that keep us poor. The first is lifestyle inflation. So this is a mistake that I made earlier in my career. When I first got promoted and I started to earn more, I took most of my money and I went out to celebrate. I will go to a club, I will open a bottle, I will also spend the weekend in Bali, in Bangkok, in all these nice weekend trips. And at the end of every month, I realized that I have nothing left. But it's easier said than done because everyone around me was also spending it up and upgrading their lifestyle as well. Okay, so here's my favorite story, okay? So I used to work in a big US bank, and everyone there was very stylish and fashionable, And there was an unspoken rule there that we have to look very professional and stylish and high-end in front of our clients. Okay, so I still remember it like it was yesterday. Everyone in the office wore really expensive shoes. For my female colleagues, it would be Louboutins with its signature red bottom soles. And for my male colleagues, everyone was wearing Ferragamo. The pressure to conform and to buy these expensive brands was very real. But I refused. I got my work shoes from Bata. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the brand Bata, it is a much more affordable brand that it is well known for making school shoes for children. So I wore those shoes to school, and eventually I found out that they also make adult shoes. So as a loyal customer, I bought those to work as well. Now obviously I didn't fit in fashion-wise with the bank, and that's also one of the smaller reasons why I shift from finance to tech. But it showed me that my environment and the people around me really did affect my lifestyle and the way I handle my own money. The second middle class mistake that I want to share about is not being aware of your burn rate. Burn rate basically describes how fast you're burning through your own cash. And it's often a financial matrix to analyze how healthy a company is. So when I was working in finance, I was an analyst there, and one of my jobs is to analyze companies and see how healthy they are and recommend them as a good investment. And one of the things that I often look at is the company's burn rate. So as I was analyzing these companies, I realized that I could apply the same analysis to myself and understand my own burn rate. So what I did was to list down my top 5 biggest expense that I spend every month. And they are taxes, rent, food, transport, and subscription. For taxes, I realized that as my incomes grow, the amount of my taxes is growing exponentially as well. Initially, I thought that there was a calculation error. So I actually called up IRAS and asked them, hey, what's wrong? Why is the number so big? They were actually very nice, and they advised me that there are 2 key main ways to actually reduce my tax expense. The first is to top up my own CPF and my family's CPF, and the second is to open a SRS account and to invest for my own retirement. So by focusing on my top 5 expense, I was able to drastically reduce my burn rate. One last point. Earlier, I mentioned that I have now moved to Thailand. Moving from Singapore, a higher cost, high income city, to Thailand, a lower cost, it has further reduced my burn rate. I know most people can't just do this and just move from countries to country. We all have different commitments, but this is the exact value of what financial freedom has given me. The ability to relocate, the ability to live a new life, the ability to move to a new country. I will be sharing in a different video of my step-by-step guide of how I moved from Singapore to Thailand. So please subscribe to find out more. And now onto the last common middle class mistake that I noticed that I was making. That is doing the opposite of step 1 and 2. Being active in your passive income, but being passive in your active income. Earlier I mentioned how I noticed some people are very passive in their jobs. They don't reskill, they don't network, they don't interview regularly to find out new opportunities. And the other aspect is being very active in our passive income. This means trying to pick single stocks or trying to analyze companies or staying up late to do day trading or spending a lot of time on forums trying to find the next meme stock, next meme coin. Actually, a lot of evidence out there that says that in the long run, passive investing actually outperforms active investing. So if someone is being passive in their active income and active in their passive income, they're literally doing the opposite, and they're setting up themselves for financial losses. So there you have it. This is my entire financial journey. Let me know in the comments what else you think I could have done better. And please subscribe to check out my next video on my step-by-step guide of how I moved from Singapore to Thailand. Till next time, thank you and take care.